Welcome. My name is Colleen Tauke and I'm the sewing specialist for Fons Porter. In this Sew Easy tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create the units called diamond squares. Now, we've got one here on the Sewing Center. A diamond square looks like this, and we're going to be using a tool by Deb Tucker called Square² to create these really super accurate pieces. Now, the pieces that we're going to be created were also used in the quilt behind me to create a perfect patchwork every time. So what we're going to do then is I will show you that there is a template for cutting the center square on this tool, and then a finishing sizing up template on the other side for making the exact cut at the very finish of the block. So what we're going to show you then is creating these blocks. Sometimes can be troublesome because the inside square is actually a math that no one wants to have to do to figure out. So what we're going to be doing is your pattern will tell you to cut a strip of fabric a certain width. Well, that isn't exactly the size you need for the center. So we're going to be using, let me flip this over, the template that is created on the end of this ruler, and it makes the block the exact size. Because these are set on point, the math gets to be a bit cumbersome. Nobody wants to have to figure those out. So in order to create that center, we're going to be just using, for instance, here we're going to be cutting it's going to be finished 4-inch, but the inside piece, we're going to use this template, following the diagrams there, and you can follow along with instructions in your pattern, and there's also instructions that come with the tool. And you've been just trimming a little piece away like that. Now we've got the center pieces created for our diamond square units. Now we will then be taking squares of fabric, and here we're using 4 different ones because we're going to create a scrappy block, each of the corners being different. And these we simply need to cut in half. So our directions will have you go in, cut the squares, and then cut each of the squares in half diagonally once, corner to corner. Cut just like that, and you would cut then down through all of your squares to create 2 triangles like this. Put that out of the way. The reason why we're cutting them this direction is that we're going to be putting them on the outer edge. And in this instance, we're doing scrappy, so whether it be a variety of fabrics. We want the bias edge to be in the interior of the block and to be straight of grain out here. That keeps our block stable as we're working on it. So what we're going to be doing then is joining these to the outside corners, and you would lay them right sides together. And these are just a bit oversized, so you can just center with just a dog ear on both sides, and I'll pick this up and you'll see that I have overhang on each side. And then you would go in, put the other one on the other side the same manner, and stitch those with an accurate 1/4-inch seam on each side. Then you go in and press those seam allowances toward the outer edge. I'll just do that with my fingernail here. And you'll see how you have kind of a long dog ear pieces. That's okay, that's the way it's supposed to look. Okay, now I've got one that's already pressed and ready to go, so we've got one like this. Then we're going to drop in those last 2 triangles. And again, those are just oversized a bit, so we can have a dog ear off both sides, right sides together, like this. Then we're taking them over to the sewing machine and do the 1/4-inch seam down each side. Now this is the time to really be practicing your 1/4-inch seam, keeping those accurate. You don't want to stretch your fabrics. Remember that bias cut that we made diagonally across the square. One thing that can help keep your patchwork from stretching when you're sewing is to use a bit of spray sizing or spray starch on your fabrics before you cut the squares out. So that's a little tip. If you're having to make a lot of these pieces and you're having a little issue with things becoming distorted, go back and try that trick. I know at first I had an aversion to the whole idea of having to use spray starch or sizing. But once I did it, I found out that my patchwork turned out a lot nicer. It can be your best tool. So then we stitch the last two in place, and then again, open the seam allowances all the way out like this, and you would press those. But you'll see that they overlap and they're a little messy on the outer edge, but that's okay because we're going to go back to that tool we have and make this a perfect block. Now I have one that's pressed and ready to go. And two sides have already been trimmed on this side, on this one, so maybe we will use the one we just created. Now, the other end of our tool has lines that correspond to the finished size of our block and an inner broken line with each of the intersections, so that when we lay this on our block, we can line up each of the little intersections perfectly, and our broken line falls right on our seam allowance between the center square and the outer triangles. And you can see I will be trimming off just a little bit on two sides. And if you've ever tried to make these in great numbers like would be used in this quilt called Country Fair, you know that a little inaccuracy in many places can create a large headache when you're done. So by trimming off just these few pieces, lifting the tool, rotate your block. It's a great trick just to lift the tool, don't reposition it, because what you're looking for again is to position your block underneath, matching all of those little cross hatches and the broken line on that seam allowance. Trim the last two sides. Make sure you have a nice sharp rotary cutter. And you finish with the diamond square unit. Now, as we look at this, you will notice that we have a nice accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance left behind on each of the four corners, so that when you're going to match it with other blocks in your quilt, you've got perfect patchwork every time. For more of our Sew Easies, visit our website. Thanks for joining me today.